But I guess you can think about it in two separate parts. There's academia and there's industry, right? So academia is essentially professors who are paid by the university to do, basic grassroots science, right? In anything, right? And when it comes to industry, you have a company who's funding that research, right? So they're trying to make a product or kind of push something kind of out the door. They still do great research, right?
Hmm.
How those two groups of people obtain money is completely different. So essentially, with industry, you're getting all the money from the company, right? So if I was, for example, after my PhD, I could potentially do a postdoc at a university or I could do it with a company. If I do my postdoc with the company, say, for example, like I do a postdoc with Pfizer, right?
Hmm.
Pfizer's paying me that money to do that postdoc. When it comes to academia, so profs who make a living as academics, the university will pay them if they get tenure, so they have a process to be accepted and being paid by the university. Um, but how they fund their research is through government grants, essentially. So my professor, for example, will apply for grants from Canada. So there's things like NSERC, CIHR, these kind of government funding agencies where you write an application and you say like, hey, I have this really cool research program. We're trying to figure out this problem to, solve antibiotic resistance. Here's what we're doing. Please give us some money, right? And they'll basically give you money to work on that project, right? So as an academic prof, very stressful to try to find all of this money because you're constantly applying for grants. You need the money for consumables, for equipment, for instruments, for paying grad students. When you're in industry, the money comes a little bit easier because the company's paying you to do that research. Both groups do amazing research.
Hmm.
It's they just work a little bit differently. Yeah. So if you're talking about like things like big pharma, I don't know if it necessarily applies to like a graduate role, but I think if you're in an industrial role, the company has interests to, either find something or to try to push something out the door. Um, Obviously, you don't just push stuff out the door because you're going through clinical trials, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
there's
yeah,
like the process, right? Like
there's a
the
process,
scientific
yeah.
method, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like I wouldn't say eliminates, right? But
Totally. Yeah.
like they're all regulations that no matter how nefarious a company sounds or whatever, they
Yeah.
still have to go through all these steps and like check marks and making
Absolutely.
sure they're
Yeah.
viable,
Yeah.
right? I think some of the concern with some people, especially our neighbors down south, right, is like, oh, like this project is being funded by this person, or and even with the university, right? Who just like who decides which grants get approved and which grants don't, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then like again, like don't get me wrong, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to break it down for people that might be thinking it that don't have an idea how it's funded, right?
Yeah.
It's just like I guess the area of unknown that people like fill these like gaps with their conspiracies is that point where that one person has to make a decision or a board has to make a decision. Do we give money to invest in this research or do we give money to invest in this research, right?
Yeah.
And I think people get all like pissy when it's like they think there's like an ideologue that's pushing this type of research compared to this type of research, etc., like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've
Yeah.
never been on a grant review panel, so I don't exactly know how they decide who gets what. I know my
Yeah.
prof is actually on a grant review panel for CIHR, which is a huge funding governing body in Canada. Um, and we were having a conversation the other day. Like it's a panel of scientists talking about okay, what deserves the funding, what has gone through all the checks and balances to do this, and sometimes he's surprised too because he didn't think that was a good project, whereas
Mm.
other people do, right? So um, it's extremely competitive, but sometimes yeah, it can be arbitrary in terms of like you know
Yeah.
people thinking there's pushing one agenda or the other.